Hello and welcome to Woodshed Reviews, where we look at films old and new, good and bad. And today we are going to look at the 1981 thriller Roadgames, directed by Richard Franklin and starring Stacy, Keach and Jamie Lee Curtis.
When you first mentioned it to me, I thought I'd seen it, and then I watched it and realised I hadn't seen it. So, was there a reason you picked this one?
I just read about it and realised I hadn't seen it. I read the synopsis, sounded good.
Yeah.
Got a copy, watched it. Yeah, really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. Cool. Interesting film. Definitely plenty to speak about.
Negative base 4. I haven't slept since Wednesday. I'm hallucinating. Over.
So basically it's about a truck driver called Pat Quid.
Pat Quid, as in Sterling, as he tells us. He's an American truck driver, but this is set in Australia.
That's right.
It's an Australian film, which the director, he's Australian as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they needed kind of stars to sell the film, and there couldn't have been any big stars in Australia back then.
a road movie in Australia in the early 80s. Can't think. I think they actually wanted Sean Connery at one point.
They did, but he would have cost more than the budget of the film.
Right, okay. So Stacy Keach stepped in, and Jamie Lee Curtis as a slightly smaller part than maybe her billing would suggest, but still a part nonetheless.
Hey, Baji, there's another one. Maybe I ought to pick this one up and take her to Perth with me, dazzling her with my stylish rhetoric and witty innuendo. Eh? What do you think?
Yeah, as you say, it's like a Australian road movie. A truck driver, long distance, carrying a wagon of meat. Starts to suspect that someone else he is seeing on the road on his journeys might be a serial killer killing hitchhiking women. That's a synopsis without getting into too much sort of spoilery territory.
Yeah, and heavily influenced by Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window.
It feels like Rear Window on a truck.
It does. Because the director himself, he went on to direct Psycho 2.
Yes, that's right. That's just like a year or two later, isn't it? Yeah. Which is pretty decent sequel.
And I believe he studied with John Carpenter.
Oh, is that the Jamie Lee Curtis angle?
Yeah, that's how he got hold of her. And I think when they were studying, he invited Alfred Hitchcock to come in and speak to the class.
Okay, yeah.
So he was definitely a Hitchcock buff.
Yeah, and there's a Hitchcock reference in the film, isn't it? Very slight, when I think Jamie Lee Curtis is going through Stacy Keach's belongings, and there's what's a Hitchcock book or magazine or something, as if that wasn't enough. But there's definitely a lot of sort of Hitchcockian moments in it for sure, and it's got that feel to it, and it definitely does feel like, I suppose in Rear Window we've got James Stewart trapped in an apartment looking out his window, and in this he's not trapped in the truck obviously, but he's sort of seeing the world and the story and the events unfold from his truck, and he's a little bit helpless to do a huge amount about it.
Yeah, so he's always kind of questioning whether he's really seen a murder.
Yeah.
And he's not quite sure whether it's just his imagination or what.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting concept, and I love like it being on the road and the idea of there's all these other characters that come in and out of it, and he passes them on the road one time, and then he meets them at a truck stop or a cafe another time, and that feels kind of believable, in that kind of world that you would see people over and over, certain characters and stuff like that.
Right, because it's one long stretch of road across Australia.
Right.
So they're all going the same way.
Right, so
they're passing each other. And
stopping at motels, cafes and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So there's quite a range of characters that we meet in it. But I think the chief character in this is Pat Quid himself.
I loved his character. I thought he's really funny because he's in the truck driving alone with his dog, or dingo. He
thinks it's a dingo.
So he's talking to himself or talking to the dog.
Yeah, it's a nice kind of device to so that we're not sort of just, what else would you do? I mean, I guess you could have him just talking to himself and stuff, but it gives it a little facet that makes it a bit more interesting.
Yeah, because I think we all kind of do that when we're alone in the car, or is it just me?
Yeah, I think that's just you.
Ahoy, Captain, careful. Down to the sea in a ship born of your own patient hands, eh, matey?
But his character I think would make or break the film. And for me, I could kind of see, if you'd said, I found him a little bit irritating after a while, I could kind of get that. I didn't feel it myself, but I could kind of see that might be a bit of a a hurdle to kind of get over. But I thoroughly enjoyed his performance and his character. He's sort of like a I don't know, a kind of man of the world, experienced. He's educated, but he's also down to earth.
Yeah.
But don't call him a truck driver. He may drive a truck, but he's not a truck driver.
Because he doesn't pop pills to keep himself awake on that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So he doesn't want to be associated with other truck drivers.
Yeah. I think he definitely kind of carries the bulk of the film on his shoulders, I would say, and does it really well, because that's as I say, it's a kind of make or break character to have him kind of like espousing dialogue to a dingo, you know, for a good chunk of the film. But it's supported by a lot of colourful characters.
Yes, quite a few. There's I think, what's he called, the Careful Captain, or Captain Careful, who's the guy pulling the boat. And
that's our main action scene, isn't it?
Yeah, he overtakes this guy at one point, and the guy's not too happy about being overtaken. And then later on in the film, he's been overtaken again, and he's determined not to let Pat Quid pass him.
Yeah.
And it ends with quite a spectacular stunt.
Yeah, it's probably the best. I mean, there is a bit of action at the end, but I would say that's probably the best bit of action there, and it's fairly superfluous to the story and everything like that. But it's a nice little well kind of shot, well kind of made kind of stunt and everything like that. For, I guess, I mean, it was a high budgeted film for Australian films at the time, I guess, but you know, not massive kind of like a budget in that. So yeah, that was kind of interesting. And I think it's possibly, maybe it needed a little, for me, it maybe just needed a little more action, you know, not over the top or anything like that, but just it was maybe needing a little bit more of that was kind of threaded into the story a little more, rather than you could have taken that section out and it wouldn't have affected, it wouldn't really have affected the story or the film.
That's true, because I mean the film starts with quite a horrible murder.
Yeah.
It's kind of set up like it's going to be a horror film, kind of, and it's got kind of Argento music video type
it
lighting.
It feels kind of experimental in places like that at the start, and it's very interesting. And then it kind of veers into maybe, comedy, almost maybe not slapstick, but sort of, you know, kind of like almost carry on trucking or something like that at points. So the tone is kind of,
it's strange.
It wavers a lot, but it never kind of lost me, and that's kind of rare for that. I think for me, like if a film's tone is kind of like going all over the place a little bit like that, normally I'd be like kind of zoning out and kind of getting a bit annoyed. But I never felt that with this one.
Yeah, I think because we see that murder at the start, so we know there's a killer out there, and Pat Quid's not that sure, but he's trying to put all the pieces together. Yeah. So it's quite unnerving. There's a kind of unnerving feeling in the background, because you feel like something horrible might happen to one of the characters. Yeah. Even this dog at one point, I think he stops at a cafe and they say there's bounty on dingoes here, and everyone's kind of staring at him, and so that there's always that feeling that something bad's going to happen. And I think the killer does injure the dog when he's in the cafe.
It implies it anyway, but there are other people there that it could have been, but it implies that it's a killer, and well, why not? You know, he's murdering women at this point, as we find out later. Because I suppose we should say previously to that, he is forced into picking up
a Sonny.
Yeah.
He called her Frugal Frida.
Obviously, Quid, our main guy, he's got a snappy punchline and a name for everybody. Yeah. Here's one.
Fred Frugal and his wife Frida. Frida Frugal. But she's a real dragon.
And that's the start of like the suspicion. I mean, we'll get into sort of spoilers where the suspicion that he might be the killer.
What maniac?
The one on the radio, on the news.
Yeah, go on.
I don't know, just some maniac.
Yeah? Well, what else did they say about him? Did they say what kind of rig he drove?
I didn't say he was driving a rig.
And they're looking for someone who's crossing, you know, travelling from this point to that point, who's murdering women.
Yeah.
He seems to be getting a bit obsessed about this.
What's wrong?
Shh.
Jamie Lee Curtis, we'll talk about her. She comes in at about half an hour in. She's Hitch, or Pamela, but called Hitch because she's hitchhiking.
Yeah, so he doesn't pick up hitchhikers because it's illegal, but he makes an exception in her case because I think it's the third time he's seen her.
Yeah, so she seems to be teleporting. I think he makes a joke about that, like she's gonna get to Perth before we do. Yeah, and she kind of befriends him. He kind of like tells her his theories about what's going on, and she gets quite interested in it.
Yeah, so that's quite fun, seeing them both kind of come up with theories.
Yeah.
Let's get carried away about this.
Are you kidding? It's the most fun I've had all afternoon.
They see the van, don't they?
And they think he's in the public restroom toilet. We've got that car alarm going off, which is just giving that kind of tense kind of anxiety kind of going on.
You know, butchering young girls is one thing. But when you hurt my animal, you made a big mistake, pal.
I mean, while Pamela, or Hitch, is searching
The van.
Which looks empty,
Yeah.
but she finds him in there sleeping.
In there sleeping.
And he wakes up. So that's her kidnapped. The killer escapes with her.
Yeah.
And then we get a really funny scene, which is kind of set up to be a big action chase, where Quid runs out and jumps on the motorbike.
Yeah. Yeah, and he can't quite pull that one off.
He follows them.
Yeah.
And he catches up with the green van, and he sees the killer drive in, but he looks like he's speaking to someone.
She doesn't look too kidnapped to me, does she to you, buddy?
Yeah, because he's always doubting himself about whether his theories are accurate or not. So at this point he thinks, oh, she's just off with him now. You know, I thought we had a connection, but she's just, you know, he's quite dismissive of it and kind of puts it all to the back of his mind for now and kind of thinks maybe I'm just imagining this, or at one point, oh, I don't even care anymore, you know.
Oh, she's all yours, Mr. Smith or friggin' Jones. Whatever your game is.
Because I think at that point he's been stopped by the police and they're suspecting him of doing it because the killer had used his name at the start of the film from the side of his van.
Right.
So there's all these things that are kind of like placing a little bit of a noose around his neck.
According to Mr. Rushworth, his daughter is travelling west with a truck driver, described in his mid-40s. Police have fears that the truck driver, whose name has not yet been released, may be the same man wanted in connection with the disappearance of a missing Melbourne girl.
So they're looking for this guy and he's fitting this profile. So that kind of, I guess, culminates at the end when he's chasing down. There's a little bit of an action sequence, I suppose, when a slow-moving truck chasing a slow-moving van with a police car tailing them at the back through little suburban sort of streets and stuff. And it culminates with him kind of landing his truck on the van. And then he has a scuffle with the killer. But we get a great kind of like moment when everyone, kind of the cops arrive and everything, and obviously they think he's the killer because, well, he is trying to kill this guy. And I thought for a moment, is that going to be our Sting ending? I thought that's what it was going to be, and I don't know if I would have maybe preferred if that had been the case, possibly.
I know, it's because the whole film you're feeling like something horrible is going to happen at some point.
Yeah.
And I thought this was it. The killer's going to get away and he's going to get blamed.
Because he's basically there, and it's not until they go into the van and Jamie Lee Curtis is in the van.
Sleeping bag over her.
Yeah, and she says, no, it's not him, it's him.
Yeah.
And then they get him. I don't know, would have preferred it if it had been the sort of downbeat twist ending? Possibly, but it doesn't. It's not like it falls at the final hurdle or anything like that.
But I think because he cared about the characters quite a bit.
Yeah.
They're kind of warm to them both, and in a way, kind of glad it worked out. Whereas we've seen it, other films are where it doesn't.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, it's a change.
Yeah, it was. I think it could have worked either way. I just kind of thought, oh, that's quite nice, and then it kind of like it's resolved in a good way, but quite quickly after that. So maybe just needed a little finesse in there, but
Yeah.
apart from that, but then I guess there is a sort of an extra ending onto that, which maybe pushed it a little too far for me.
Yeah, where the meat's getting chopped up.
There's a scene earlier on in the film where
He delivers this meat, doesn't it? And the way the truck.
it's like a couple of pig carcasses overweight.
Yeah.
There's inference that, yeah, this is not a pig carcass.
That the killer's maybe stashed a couple of bodies in there.
Yeah. When we see the meat that he's delivered being chopped up and going to butchers or going to, or whatever like that, I thought, okay, that's interesting. But then it just goes a little too far right at the end.
Yeah, the head in the bucket.
It's not a deal breaker or anything like that, but I could have been done without that bit, I suppose. Other than that, no, thoroughly
Cool.
enjoyable film, worth checking out. The cover probably doesn't do it justice,
But it sells as a kind of slasher horror.
which it definitely isn't.
No,
Not even slightly.
you just got that one scene at the start, and it's not
Yeah.
even graphic.
No, you don't see anything happening or anything like that.
You just aware that someone's been murdered.
And there's no, but they're discussing body parts being buried and all that stuff, but never see any of that.
Yeah, so it's strange as an 18, but there you go.
It's probably not the film that you probably think it's going to be from that, but I think it's an enjoyable film nonetheless, and probably better than if I had gone down that route. It would have probably maybe just felt like a bit of a clone of various other things. Obviously, we'll compare it to Hitchcock films, but it's a bit more light on its feet. It's a little more fun.
Really enjoyed the character. Stacy Keach was great.
Yeah.
A lot of fun to watch. Unpredictable.
Yeah, you never knew quite where the story was going and things like that. So that was interesting. And yeah, it definitely feels like a film of its own ilk. So would recommend it. I'm gonna say for my review, I'm gonna give it a 4. 4 logs on the fire for me. I think I'm gonna go with that.
I'll sing you 3.5.
Okay.
Yeah, I used to be a 4, but I'll go for 3.5.
I watched it twice. First viewing, I probably thought 3.5, but second, enjoyed it more for what it is and
Yeah.
doing something different, doing it really well. It's flown under the radar both at the time of release, and it's still, I don't think it's kind of really got a big kind of cult audience or anything like that. Not sure if it ever would, but definitely worth checking out if you like the sound of what we've talked about. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Highly recommended, definitely.
well, that's all we've got for you today. We hope you enjoyed that. Check out the film, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.